probably press record, and I will repeat that. So I'm going to break you guys into mini groups to review Tuesday's lecture and the main points that we should cover. And I will give you guys 7 minutes. Now, breakout rooms. All right, create room. Win.
Oh.
All right. Welcome back, well, preview. Waiting for the other group. All right, everybody's back. So, what was the cartoon that the professor talked about?
I don't remember the cartoon.
The cartoon was the hand of GOP riding only for Republicans. If the Democratic president won't vote on it or something like that. It's basically the gist of it was because the Obama administration wanted to find a replacement for Justice Scalia. Scalia.
Yes.
Yeah, can't pronounce it. But since they're in the Senate, there's like a Republican majority. They won't let him choose because they're just waiting out the long game, waiting for a Republican president. That would be the gist of it.
Basically the gist of it.
It's kind of weird. The whole reason you have 9 justices is so you can have a tiebreaker, and you're kind of screwing that whole system up because you have an equal amount. So it's going to be like the House thing really gets done because hard to get a majority. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really good explanation of the cartoon. And what was one of the reasons why the Republican majority in Congress doesn't want to pass President Obama's appointments? Did you guys get that, or did I cut out?
You cut out.
So, of course, I forgot my question. So, why do you think the Republican majority is stalling these appointments from Obama? Shouldn't they pass who the president thinks is best fitted for the job, or why would they stop somebody?
I didn't really understand what you said.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused too.
So right now, the situation is that there is an open seat in the Supreme Court, and Obama has appointed a couple people for possible Senate approval. And in the Senate, there is currently a Republican majority. Why do you think the Senate isn't approving Obama's candidates?
Because they probably want Trump to pick the person instead of Obama.
Why is that?
Because then they'll have an advantage, because then the person wouldn't be Democratic, they would be Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because of our very polarized parties, that's what's going on, rather than passing a candidate who is fully qualified, because Obama has appointed people, or he's nominated essentially people that have been really moderate as far as their political beliefs, but because Obama is the one appointing them, the Republicans in the Senate are just like, nope, even though that person might be a candidate that could lean either way in a case. And so that is kind of the big issue that's going on with that. And so after we talked about the Supreme Court and the cartoon, what did we move on to?
We moved on to the Federalist 78.
Yeah. And so we talked about that, and he talked about some of the flaws in Federalist 78. And because we covered Federalist 78 generally on Monday, I'd like to talk about the flaws that he pointed out. Did any of you write down what one of them was?
One of the flaws with Alexander Hamilton's version of Federalist 78 was that he assumed that oh God, hear myself talking, it's so tricky. He's assuming the fact that the judicial branch wouldn't be affected by politics, but it's highly affected by politics now. So it's kind of the change of times kind of creating a problem.
And can you explain a bit more why there is politics involved with the Supreme Court? It kind of connects to the
there's politics involved with the Supreme Court because the whole reason why you have lifetimes of service is so the fact that you wouldn't have the will to reward the party that appointed you. That's not the rest freedom use as you have to report. But I feel like that's a problem now because you have the Senate approval and everything instead of being a merit system, you're kind of pushing it, waiting, biding your time, and that should really be what's happening in the papers where it specifically says that, when the person's gone, you must replace them. But you shouldn't have to wait like this.
Yeah, exactly. Politics in the executive branch and the legislative branch are competing against each other to influence the judicial branch. And so politics are much more prominent now because of that. And the increased polarization of the parties is what has been a real catalyst to make that kind of situation happen, and not what the framers intended. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's move on. What was another flaw? Nothing in your notes?
What I wrote down, I don't know if this is considered what we just talked about, but it said the role of the people ill humors.
That was more so talking just about the way that the Supreme Court can protect the rights of citizens from momentary ill humors of the majority of the public. An example of that would be, let's say, Brown v. Board of Education. Even though still a majority of the country was pro-segregation, the Supreme Court stepped in to protect the rights of those citizens from the current ill humor of the majority population. So that was more so of a positive rather than a flaw. But that's a good point. Thank you for bringing it up. Here, okay, how about this? I'm gonna give you a better question. What is something from lecture that you didn't quite understand that professor talked about? And I just wanted you to look over your notes.
Professor Freeman talked about statute interpretation.
Mm-hmm. And that part kind of confused you?
Well, kind of said how it's used in basically any or most democratic countries, I think. So, does that literally just mean the interpretation of the Constitution? Or?
Yeah, his point was more so that our system having judicial review where we review look at bills and cases that have been passed to determine if they are constitutional is a thing that is somewhat unique to the American system. Not all systems have judicial review. For example, the UK does not have that institution in place in their judiciary. And that is, I would say, is a disadvantage to their people because there's not a double check on the legislature and what they're passing. So that's kind of what he meant by that.
So I was kind of confused, like what he said about like a contract between the people and the government.
Yeah. So when he was talking about that, he was talking about actually the Constitution itself. The Constitution is our contract. It's saying that, hey, these are the rules and regulations, and you have to follow them, and we have to follow them. And together, by us both following them, it actually can go back to my analogy of politics being like soccer. The people and the players must all agree on the same rules for there to be a legitimate game to happen. And that game is kind of politics and life in this analogy, while the rules are like our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is there anything else that you guys want to address?
I have another one.
Yeah, go for it.
It said like the framers' intent. Wasn't the framers' intent for it to be like kind of like in the middle, like not picking sides, kind of like yeah.
And so was that your question was just what framers' intent meant?
Yeah, like what does it mean, kind of?
Yeah, so
what I got from it. So
yeah, so it's basically what they wanted the system to do and how they wanted it to be. So they intended that whatchamacallit, the judiciary would be this objective kind of middle branch. And as we can see, it is not as objective as they had thought it would be. Does that answer your question?
yeah. I was like kind of like confused about what their intent was.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I didn't know if that was just it or if there's like another part or like if it had any more.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
So, Professor Freeman never said this regularly, but this is what I comment. When he was talking about the master and servant relation between civil servant, God, that is so
Sorry.
freaking, no, it's actually me, my mind.
Oh, okay.
Freaking doing myself hard. So the whole reason why, like Alexander Hamilton says that we shouldn't be like the people shouldn't be the government shouldn't drive the people should drive the government. I think that's going back to the original question. I think that's another fault with the because the fact that I think politicians, and this is designed to the previous time I said that the politicians are putting their will onto the judicial branch, and inherently it's not applied for every politician, but inherently they're onto their own interests. That's kind of what this is doing. But they're kind of applying to their own self-interest. So that's the one problem. I think that's even the fact that the government should be driven by people. That's another problem that we're facing today.
Yeah, it seems like currently there's more of an influence from legislatures on the judiciary rather than the people who should be the ones to, if there should be any influence upon the judiciary, it should be through the people. And as Hamilton said in 78, it should be through the people through collective and formal action, such as a constitutional amendment, not just a momentary ill humor that a representative might believe that the majority has and should be implemented. So, is that answering the question for you? Cool. All right. Now, is there anything else in the lecture that was kind of confusing?
I just want to say I just found in my notes like another way that the judiciary branch is weak, and it was because the executive holds the sword and the legislative has like the purse. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because in some ways it makes it weak, but in other ways it makes it strong by the fact that it doesn't have those powers. It only has the power to pass judgment, and it doesn't have the stickiness that can come with being in charge of the budget or the military. But not having that power does detract from what they can do and stuff like that. And I think AJ brought up in class was back when Andrew Jackson was president, he was like, oh yeah, the Chief Justice passed this, but let him enforce it, kind of thing. And so that is something that makes the judiciary branch weak is, yeah, they might pass something, but it's up to the executive, the bureaucracy, to implement it. So, yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. All right. Are there any other questions about Tuesday's lecture or possibly last Thursday's lecture, because that might be something that he might bring up, and I want to make sure that all questions are answered. Okay. So it's 6:30. We have 20 minutes left. I want to offer just kind of an open forum and to ask any questions that you might have. And if you want to check what your final grade will most likely be. I'll be willing to stick around and do little breakout rooms for you and do that if any of you are interested. Camille, you're interested in seeing your grade? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me know what you guys want to do. If there aren't any questions, then I'll start doing the grade review. But if not, then you are, and so if not, then you guys are free to go if you don't have any questions and you don't want to review your grade. No questions?
Not for now. I think I'm interested also in checking my final grade.
Okay. So is everybody interested in checking their grade? I would like some verbal confirmation from people.
Oh. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Sandra, Angelina?
Yes. I think that I know what my final grade's gonna be.
Okay.
It's gonna be a 18.
Then you are free to go if you would like. Says I'm just gonna go do breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. And also thank you for a wonderful class, everybody. This was